And a very big welcome. You are so welcome here to the first episode of the brand new unofficial Shelburne podcast, Here to See the Shelburne, hosted by myself, Andrew McGarren, and a very, very special welcome to a man who's no stranger to most of you, Donica McEgon, aka Dunny. Dunny, how are you today? And you're very warm welcome.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, great to be here. Great to chat about shells on a different platform. Uh, Racking them up now at this stage, but yeah, always happy to talk about the Reds.
Yeah, now you're a man who's a hero and a legend over on the Riverside, a man who's lots of opinions. And no doubt in the year ahead, we hope to hear some of those opinions. As everyone who was a Shelburne fan will probably know, the 1895 podcast is the official podcast. This is an alternative version. So we hope to be able to give some perhaps different opinions. Certainly, we'll all be given the honest opinions on the year ahead and an exciting 2025 ahead, Donny. But before we get stuck into 2025, let me just take you back down memory lane for a moment.
Second yellow card there, which Jones be quite happy with. Dean Williams, notice he's just coming down below. Here is Sean Boyd into the wall, deflected bar, saves it in! Shelburne find the goal! Harry Wood, the jersey's off. 6 minutes to go. A massive breakthrough goal, a very late breakthrough goal for Shelburne. And this side that never says die, this side with an outstanding record when striking first, has found the moment. Harry Wood returned in the summer. That's his first goal since his return. It could be a goal that puts him into Shelburne folklore. I said the tide was turning, Des. And look at the scenes. Sean Boyd's free kick takes a slight deflection. It hampers Brian Maher's ability to save it properly. It falls to Harry Wood. And he has the simplest task to put it into the back of the net. Interesting to see if he's offside from the free kick. But he makes no mistake and puts it into the corner.
Now that's the extended version, of course. And Donny, I know you'll forgive me for playing that. I've
Yeah,
only,
no,
I've only,
happy to hear that, Jim.
yeah, I've only listened to it 12 times today. But in all seriousness, Donny, what a night that was. Can you take us back to your November
Well,
1st?
yeah, well, I was up there. I was one of the lucky ones who got a ticket. Obviously, there were issues around um, the allocation and whatnot. Hopefully, that's a thing of the past when it comes to Derry away. Anyway, given that they have a new stand that looks ready to go in the 2025 season, but one of the few games, it was interesting. I was looking at an interview with Damien Duff the other day where he said one of the few things that he's looked back on since that night has been the footage from Talca. And it was one of those where I stayed up in Derry that night and got to sort of consume the media and the scenes from Talca Park, rather than being on the bus back with everybody. And it was very emotional watching the scenes in Talca Park. One of the few times where you'd almost have FOMO for being somewhere rather than not being somewhere, because obviously there were way more Reds in Talca than there were in the Brandywell. Some people celebrated in different ways. I ended up out the back on the kind of concourse area with the nervous heads. Myself and Dara Farrell and a few others were out there. Just when the significance of the goal and knowing how little time was left just kind of hit me, it was kind of like, oh no, like this is on now. Like we've gone from kind of assuming that, when Rovers were ahead, that was probably it. I thought before that goal we were probably going to need a favour from Waterford, and we were hearing that maybe Waterford had hit the bar and so on. It was going to be one of those that we were kind of going to have to rely on a favour. And then the goal goes in, and you immediately realise, no, it's in our hands now, and it's up for us to hang on, and we don't need any favours. So it got very serious. So like other people, 95% of people managed to just go bananas and berserk, and fair play to them. And it's great watching those scenes back too. But for me and a few others, we couldn't really watch from that point on, and spent most of the time out in the concourse. And just when we heard 7 minutes added, that was painful, but came back in on the final whistle, and the scenes after that were just some of the best moments of our lives, I think.
Yeah, and it really was an incredible night. The I was in Talca with many others, and it was a night to remember, as you said, Dunny. But there may be Shells fans out there, perhaps maybe under the age of 25, maybe even under the ages of 30, who may not fully, may not fully have sunk in the magnitude of that win. It's possibly one of the biggest achievements in living memory for the club when you consider the circumstances of the last 10, 15 years. Even for the, I know Duffer and all said that on the inside they had expectations to challenge, but realistically, I don't think Shells were in the mix this time last year.
No, well, it's often said that the bookies rarely get it wrong, and obviously the odds of 25-1 have been spoken about a lot since the win, and even on the run in, I suppose. I can, I don't remember a time when an outsider with those kind of odds would have come close. Never mind winning the thing outright. Obviously, the narrative was there for Derry and Rovers to fight it out. Could Rovers make history and be the first team to do 5 in a row, or could Derry stop them? And obviously, we inserted ourselves in the narrative and hung in there till the death. So, like, considering where our previous title wins would have come from, with the sort of Galacticos team of the early to mid 2000s, we would have been expected to win those titles, and the one that we didn't win in that run in the early noughties as well was one that we would have expected to. We were kind of in Rovers' position now, where it was on us, and if we didn't win, we had failed,
Yep.
So this is a total turnaround from that situation, and as you say, considering where we've spent the majority of the last 2 decades, it's certainly one of the sweetest ones we'll probably ever win.
Yep, and I still think for me personally, it still hasn't fully sunk in, but I think with the resumption of football now in the next couple of days, will be business resuming. Now, as you said, we have a lot of football to come in the weeks ahead. President's Cup kicks off this Friday. We'll talk about that shortly. But, we're in a good position. I think yourself and myself, Donny, were at the fans forum about 10 days ago. I recall you kicked off the evening with probably the best question of the night for Damien Duff. First question up, you flummoxed him about Sean Gannon's absence from the Champions League in July. I didn't think he saw that one coming.
No, well, it's funny how that's kind of grown legs, actually, since I hadn't intended it to. But I was asked by our co-owner, Neil Doyle, when I entered the building, would I mind asking a question, because apparently, maybe people are intimidated by the manager, and he thought that I might have the minerals to ask a question. So I did, but I just asked that because, and obviously I prefaced it with thanking him and the staff and the players for what they've given us, not just this year gone, but the last 3 years really have been the most enjoyable 3 years in my time following the club, I have to say. We could get into some of the issues off the field as well that have contributed to that, but certainly Damien Duff and his staff have played a huge role in all of that. So I thanked him, and then it's just something that me and friends of mine have been discussing, about the formulation of this new team, of the new squad, and how we're looking and so on. The usual silly season talk about how things are shaping up, and the one area where you might feel a little understaffed is at the back, and I think particularly at fullback. So just having that specific fixture, and a fixture that's so important for the club, obviously, because the Champions League game allows us the potential to go the route that, say, Shamrock Rovers did this year, and you've seen the financial windfall that they've been able to accrue with going through the front door, if you like, of winning their first game in the Champions League qualifiers, and the sort of the bevy of opportunity that opens up in front of you there. And we're going into that game already knowing that Sean Gannon isn't available. So one of our best players, arguably our best player, our most consistent player last season. And it's a huge game. So what, do we have a plan B or a plan C? And I was thinking more, plan C, because you could put Tyreek there. But then the issue is, I think you end up cannibalizing the rest of your back four a little bit, where let's say, you're missing your right back, so you put Tyreek over from left to right, but now you have a space to fill at left back. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
you move Cam out to left back, but now to fill one position at right back, you've changed your left back and you've changed your centre half, and you're bringing a new centre half in
yeah. And I think
from the bench.
yeah. Sorry, Julie. I think that's something that the manager even admitted, that Tyreek didn't have the best night of his career that night. So yeah, one change does have that domino effect. I think the manager was very close to offering you a spot on his coaching ticket there for a second there. I think he was impressed with the
Well, yeah, I
forethought.
wasn't.
But
It could have landed any number of ways, I suppose, and I'm still totally. Well, I'm not totally sure as to
yeah,
whether he was a bit annoyed, but he took it well anyway. But no, I like, because obviously I'm not. Jesus, I'm not out to score points, certainly from him, but just something that's literally, if I hadn't have been, I was given an opportunity to talk, and it was given the floor, and it's something I'd been talking about with Tyg Brennan and Gaz O'Reilly recently, and I thought, well, I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't, when given the opportunity, if I didn't mention it. And look, what I enjoyed about the fans forum, and it started with Neil Doyle and Damien, I thought that the honesty and the openness and the way that the manager spoke there about, like, well, frankly, if there was an obvious candidate to be got for a right back, we probably would have gone and gotten them. But if someone becomes available, then we'll look at it. But frankly, we're not just going to bring people in for the sake of it. And I think, he held his hands up and said, it's not ideal, but we're not going to waste money, and we're not going to waste places in the squad for inferior players. So we're going to kind of roll with it and see what we can do. Whether it's, he mentioned changing the shape, and I know it's a long way down the line to worry about a game in June or July, even, I should say, but in the first week of July, I believe it is. But it is a big game. Where it's just a league game or a league suspension or something that didn't have the financial implications and so on, I think it wouldn't be worth mentioning. But yeah, we don't want any long term injuries to anyone of our back four or starting back four. That's for sure.
yeah. We'll talk about the squad itself in a few minutes, but yeah, I think that sort of set the tone on the fans forum. As you, without repeating you there, Dunny, I think Neil Doyle was the unofficial star of the show. All you want from anyone who's representing the club is as much clarity as they can give you. There's always going to be points that and avenues that they can't go down for a number of reasons. But I think Neil was very open, very honest, and there was a good crowd there. I thought a lot of the questions were this time. I'm not blaming people for previous years because the club has been in different positions, but the questions may not have been of the same standard that we heard this year. And for me, anyway, I know you were in the cheap seats down the back. I was in the padded seats up near the front, and you could see that the people presenting, like Neil and Brian McGovern and Karen Walsh, who gave a very good talk on the women's side, they had prepared, and that's all you you seek. But it really
Yeah,
is yeah. Go ahead, Denise.
overall, sorry. Yeah, overall, I thought it was very impressive on the club's behalf. An impressive group of speakers, and as you say, like, I've took some of the notes I took on the forum were just things like you said: honesty, openness, transparency, hard work. That these are things that you can see are coming from the influence of Neil Doyle and others. And like I said about the manager when answering a question, not pretending to have all the answers all the time, or that everything is going to be perfect. Not trying to do a comical Ali job and saying, everything's grand, nothing to see here. It was very much we're doing our best. Here's the plan. Here's what we want to achieve and how we're going to go about it. But I appreciated Neil Doyle in particular, asking for patience on certain issues, saying it won't be perfect overnight, but to sort of bear with him, and that eventually, and he was open to people's opinions and suggestions, and that sort of collaboratively will get to where he wants us to be. So I don't think you can say fairer than that. I think it's been pretty self-evident that things around the ground and around the club are improving since his coming on board, and he has my full support. And it was just very pleasing to be able to leave feeling better, than you had when you arrived. Obviously, it hasn't always been the case with previous fans forums, and feeling like you've been treated like an adult as well.
Yep. And let's talk through one. I know we won't take too much time, but can we talk through a couple of those points that were raised that night? I think
Sure.
fans probably would have seen across the media pages the improvements in Talca. I think that's primarily at the moment on the main stand side of Richmond Road, just to allow for, is it ingress or I don't know, ingress or
Ac-
exiting or whatever,
access
access.
and egress, I believe, are the
Egress,
are the,
thank
are the
egress.
terms. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dunny. So that's going to, I think, officially the capacity is going to go up to around 5,400. Now, even that jump from, let's say, 4.5 to 5.5, if you cast your mind back to the last two games of last season, for example, against Drogheda and Waterford, in the other way around, sorry, but they were incredible nights. The atmosphere was almost, you could almost cut it with a knife, as they say. So with those extra 1,000 bodies or so on match nights now, this Talca should be as close to being at that sort of old fortress that I certainly remember it as many years ago.
You'd
But
hope so.
yeah,
You'd hope so. Obviously, I've spoken to supporters about this, and there is an element as well of just to sort of to play devil's advocate on it, and increasing capacity alone, without the ancillary sort of facilities around that improving as well, is it's important to get a balance, that you can't just keep shoving people in, and not being able to provide them with, say, extra toilets, access to food and drink, and so on and so on. I'm not saying that they are, but this is why I think it's this sort of gradual increase, where I know at the evening, the South Talca Park evening, the wrap up night, Neil Doyle spoke and mentioned 6,000 as a goal that he wanted to achieve for capacity this season. As you said, it's about 5,400 or 5.5, around that is what he predicts for the first competitive game against Derry, which is great. It was 4,750, I think, was the number at the end of last season. So, increments going the right direction. I believe the Ballybock end is going to be reopened to more away fans. So I think, although the capacity will be up, I think we're looking at up to 1,000, I think, in the Ballybock end for away supporters, and then a few hundred more in the home end. And to my knowledge, the issues with access and egress on the main stand side allows us to get fire certificates and so on signed off on, which allows other parts of the ground, like the new terracing on either side of the riverside, to be used, and so on. So it isn't always obvious why certain things might get done first. And again, this is the sort of patience element that we're going to have to try and employ as fans going forward. That, like, just because you see work going on in one area doesn't necessarily mean that it's all about that. That can have knock-on implications elsewhere, and so on. But we're talking about facilities with increased attendance. Obviously, the fan zone is the elephant in the room here, and what that could provide to supporters on match nights.
yeah, it could be, as I say, a bit of a game changer. There's those of us in Talca Park, Dunny, who've seen the good, bad, and the very ugly over the years, and I think we sort of we roll with the punches, and we sort of, you take what you're given, and the toilets aren't great and so on. But if the club is to really push on now, I think we're going to get not a lot of people, but families might come to a game once to get the lovely atmosphere and see what's going on. But certainly from my own aspect, with my own two daughters, they won't come to Talca Park because of the toilets. And if we're looking to get new fans in, they'll come for one game, maybe 2 games, but if they're not getting a good match night experience, the basics, there's going to be difficult to get them back and to latch them in, particularly
Yeah,
when you got the likes of our buddies over in Leinster and Lansdowne or in Ballsbridge, not a million miles away. So the club is moving in the right direction, as you say, but there's still a lot to do. But compared to where we were even 2 years ago, it's night and
yeah,
day, really.
yeah. I mean, it's the thing is, work is being done. That's obvious to see, and you can't solve everything at once. And I think, frankly, trying to do too much at the same time would be not the best way maybe of going about it. Um, I like what Neil Doyle said about the idea of opening the fan zone, being patient with that, and sort of seeing the knock-on effects of that in real time, rather than saying trying to revamp that and maybe put in 3 or 4 different food vendors or something like this simultaneously, and then maybe you're not getting the full picture of what the initial change has given you. You know what I mean? So, like, I think his plan with the fan zone is to hopefully have that open sooner rather than later, and then see how does that positively affect footfall in that area for food and drink. Does it alleviate the queue on the main stand side for the bar to such a degree that everyone in the main stand who wants to go in and use the bar and the toilets, which are adjacent to it, can do so? There's extra portaloos and such going in. Like, I remember feeling that very much last season, where, like, let's say a game against Bows, I remember um, being stuck in the queue that was practically down behind the home dugout, and just seeing
Yeah.
like an older woman who was in the queue ahead of me, but she wanted to use the bathroom, and she was wondering, is this the queue for the bathroom? And I was like, well, it's the queue for the bathroom, unfortunately, and for the bar and for the gents and everything. And she had no desire to go into the bar, but she gets stuck in this very, very slow moving queue because they're only letting X amount of people into the bar because it's reached capacity, and the knock-on effects of that. And I had a friend of mine as well who told me that he timed how long it took him to when he joined the queue to when he got his burger and chips at the Roosters van, I believe it was, and it was 22 minutes. And this wasn't this was well before the game had kicked off. He was in quite early, so we'll keep coming back. And like you say, you do get used to the sort of warts and all elements of match night sometimes, but we have to be cognizant of those who might be dipping their toe for their first time, or who could be persuaded easier to not show up. And if you can't get food, you can't get drink, if you have an issue trying to use the bathroom, these are elements that could maybe drive people away or have them frequenting less regularly.
Do you think a positive result, perhaps, of the new fan zone will be we won't be seeing the trail of people going to the bar after 25 minutes anymore? That'll be a sad day, won't it?
The exodus. Well, you can't blame people either. Like, it's a symptom of a problem. Um, and sometimes it was overblown. Like, if the match was exciting, or if the match had a lot riding on it, you wouldn't see hundreds of people heading off after half an hour in a derby, say, or whatever, or
Absolutely, yeah.
if there were goals flying in and we were well on top or whatever. But if you're having a bit of a drab 0-0 and it's against Galway or something, and it's a windy, rainy night, you just forgive people for, it's their money, they've paid their money, they can go where they like. And I wouldn't necessarily assume that having a fan zone with a bar even closer to them than the other bar is going to stop people leaving early. It might have them leaving early and just getting a better service. But again, we won't. What you'd hope is that if it's staffed appropriately, and if the sort of the way the footfall is managed is done appropriately, then you can arrive later, get served, and be back in time for the second half without too much hassle. Now, Neil Doyle again did mention this at the forum and said it won't be perfect. There will be queues, there will be mistakes made, and we should be aware that it's not going to be perfect from the jump. And I think as a fan base, largely we are, we're good, right-minded thinking people, and just having it there, I think will be exciting, and I think people will be patient. I hope they will.
Yep, obviously work is well underway. So let's, as you said, let's be patient. I can picture a nice warm June evening now, Dunny, having I think it's a pint of Rockshore or whatever, wherever else they may be serving
Yeah,
back there.
yeah.
Let's
Well,
let's give it a go. Yeah, we'll see how.
absolutely. I look forward to seeing it. And look, those of us who were at the Bray away match in the cup, that was sandwiched in between the two European trips, would have seen behind the goal there in Bray, they had the little Astro area where they were serving a terrible lager, re-raw. Wouldn't recommend, but I might have had 3 or 4 of them because they were there, and that's all. That's all it was there. And you had, it was a much better experience for having that there. So, I wouldn't be a big Rockshore fan myself. Who's to say that'll be the only brew pouring?
Yeah,
Let's
I'm
wait
sure
and
it'll be
see.
one.
But anything is better than nothing.
Yep, we shall wait and see. Now, the fans forum went on for nearly 2.5 hours, and we're not going to go through all of that now. But was there anything else that you wants to cover before we wrap up that section, Dunny?
Um, I not necessarily. Just there was one thing that came out in the days following it that I thought was interesting. Again, just to sort of wrap on the forum, I was very thankful for everybody who spoke, and as you said, who they were the most prepared bunch that we've ever seen, the most sort of competent in their own sort of preparation and performance in front of the audience. So that it was, and they spoke incredibly well, and the honesty was to be commended. But what came out a few days after that was the club's link up with Jamestown Analytics, a company in England that are in charge of scouting. Effectively, I believe it's 7 people who work in an office in London, and they only work with clubs. They won't work with 2 clubs in one division, or who are a division or 2 apart. They work with Grimsby and more famously with Brighton. They didn't see a conflict of interest there, seeing as Grimsby aren't likely to be troubling the Premier League anytime soon, I guess. But with Union Saint-Gilloise, I believe, Belgium, Como in Italy, Hearts in Scotland, and now ourselves. And I just know that people inside the club are very, very excited about this and feel that it's a real boon to be the only League of Ireland club who are going to be working with them, and feel that they're really on the cutting edge of player recruitment. So hopefully we can see some fruits come from that relationship in the medium term.
Indeed, I wouldn't have heard of them. I don't think many people would have heard of them, Dunny. And that's sort of their charm, I think, and their attraction is that they're very low key. They don't like saying too much about what they do or how they go about, harvesting their data, if that's the word I can use. But just reading up on their what they did at Brighton, and that may be quite a unique case, but the players that they plucked from relative obscurity from our part of the world. Now they may not. The next McAllister, the guy I can't remember his first name, who plays for Argentina and Liverpool.
Alexis
Alexis McAllister. He may not end up in having his lunch in Fagan's and Drumcondra. But in terms of scalability and having this network, I think this is fairly incredible. Let's wait and see how it pans out. But
it's exciting.
It's very exciting. Yeah.
And even for sort of someone who's more analog than digital, myself, still just sort of analog minded. It can seem a little hard to grasp the idea of what exactly they're doing. But it seems to have been very effective. Some of those players who became very, very famous through Brighton arrived from the Belgian club that they work with first. So there's a kind of a chain that they've established there also. And I think what they claim to be sort of one of their major selling points is that they sort of cut the cloth to suit the club, and they're not going to be offering us players on wages that we wouldn't be able to afford, or putting us in the same sort of bracket as a club that's obviously earning multiple times the turnover that we do. So they pride themselves on being very club specific, and players that sort of can play in the particular system of a certain age, maybe who speak the language, whatever it might be. Someone who would fit into the sort of established norms of our football club. And now that with 3 years of sort of data on Duff and Duff Shelburne, I think that's a good basis to have for the club. It's not a brand new manager. It's a squad that has been sort of developed bit by bit over the last 3 years, with bits added and bits taken away. So we do have a sort of an identity as a footballing team and as a club now, which I think will benefit this kind of data analysis.
That is definitely something we're going to touch back on in the weeks and months ahead, Dunny. We'll leave that there for now. Time is moving on quickly. And don't forget, this is a football pod. So it's time now. Let's switch to what's happening on and off the field in that sense. Dunny, the squad, particularly on the men's side. Now, just before I move on, we will be covering the women's side in a lot more detail as we approach their kickoff. I think they start their season on March 1st with the Women's President's Cup final. And then on March 8th, they kick off the league campaign in Talca against our old friends, Shamrock Rovers. So we'll have plenty of coverage, as both Dunny and myself are very much weekly followers of the LOITV, the women's team. Speaking of LOITV, I shall be attending an LOITV workshop this evening. Looking forward to that. We shall see how that pans out.
Yeah, the two of us might be sharing a commentary booth in the coming season.
The dream team. We give the people what they want, Dunny. The dream team up in the gantry. But so go ahead.
From the men's side of things,
yes, fire away.
There's been signings obviously in the women's side too, which look very interesting. But sort of coming on from where I was just saying there with this idea that each year, rather than the bad old days where your squad was thrown to the four winds and you had to sort of start from scratch almost every year, which looking back was painful. It's nice now that we have, sort of stalwarts of the team of the last 3 seasons who continue on, and that we're kind of, there is definitely a sense that the squad is being sort of ameliorated, being made better year on year. So I have the fight. We have Lewis Temple obviously coming back. He had 2 loan spells in the first division with Longford first, I believe, and then with Wexford. But some people might remember him having to come on in the opening day of last season down in Waterford when Shane Griffin took a bad one in the first 5 minutes, I think it was, and Lewis Temple came in and was perfectly capable. So he's back in, and based on what's happened in pre-season, and the sort of predictions are that he'll be getting more game time this year and is unlikely to go out on loan. So alongside him, you'd have Kerr McEnroy, Dan Kelly, O'Kane, whose first name eludes me,
Ryan O'Kane,
Ryan O'Kane, Ellis Chapman, and Meepo. So I'm kind of wary. I like every one of those have quality. Obviously, Kerr McEnroy was the most recent and is coming over. He might be the one we know least about, seeing as he was kind of on loan and knocking around in Scotland, between the Championship and the Premier Division there. But like Ellis Chapman was one of the best players in the division for me last year. Just looks like a game changer. I believe Ryan O'Kane's had a fantastic. I've been trying to stay away from the preseason games, so I'm going on other people's sort of verdicts of what they've seen. The season's long enough, but I believe O'Kane was looked very lively on the wing in the games that he's played. I have some good friends who were at the Kerr McEnroy's debut, and they said, "Oh, we got to sign this fella when he was on trial." Been like, "Yeah, he looks composed. He looks very good on the ball. He's not giving it away. Everything's going through him in the middle." So more of a defensive midfielder, I'd say there, based on what I've heard. Obviously, Dan Kelly is a bit of a known quantity, so hopefully he can get his injuries in order and deliver something, because on his day, pacey, can beat a player, good in the final third. But from sort of getting your bum off the seat, Meepo and Ellis Chapman are the two for me that I'd have sort of highlighted and said, well, if you want goals and goal involvements, they're probably your boys. I am wary of over expecting sometimes with players. Sometimes it's, you can have your eye on one guy or a couple of people and think, well, this is where the big sort of kick on is going to occur, and it can be somebody else, like someone you've had, like an Evan Caffrey, can kick on to another level, or a signing maybe who's come in under the radar a little bit. From all I've heard, Harry Wood is the outstanding player in pre-season, which pleases me greatly. So it'd be great to see him have a full season with the form that we saw when he arrived to Shells in the first place.
Yeah, there's a lot to digest there, Dunny. Absolutely. Well, unlike yourself, I've made it to one pre-season game against Waterford, and I was lucky enough. That was, start with Kerr McEnroy. Kerr, when you see a new face, people are asking, "Who's this guy? Who's this guy?" And I thought he was very impressive. He's a left footer for a start, which gives it a certain, that changes the dynamic in the midfield. A left footer playing perhaps to the left of the tree, or whichever way they want to play. This guy was basically just flown in the day before, I think. And for anybody to be thrown into a match, even though it's a so-called friendly, you don't know these people either side of you. You probably don't even know their names. So I thought it was a great credit to the guy that he played very well. And I would say Waterford, if I was a Waterford fan, I'd be a little bit concerned, because while I saw them that day, they were fairly poor. And I've actually just kept an eye on, so I know they're only pre-season friendlies, but I think Waterford might want to get off to a quick start, or they could find themselves stuck in the mud. But what I
Hopefully,
did,
because we played them second weekend.
We're now week 2, yeah. They'll come back to bite me now. It's never an easy place to go. But I saw Meepo play that day as well, Dunny. He was fairly up. Again, it's hard to sometimes figure out where people are playing, because they're chopping and changing in the positions. But Harry Wood scored a good goal that day. I've also heard he's looking back to the man he was. But yeah, on Meepo, this guy looks like a good player to me. And obviously he wouldn't be playing at this standard if he wasn't. But what I did notice is that Shells seemed to get the ball from the back to front. That beautiful diagonal switch that Paddy Barrett loves to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be seeing a couple more of them in every game now, because Meepo, when the ball was pinged up to him in chest height, it stuck. And who was there? Who was there to just off his left or right? Our old buddy, Mr. Sean Boyd.
Yeah,
and,
Well, this is another thing, and it's just the same about Harry Wood, looking at who could be the big stars for this season, who could step up and maybe sort of outshine what we've seen from them to date. Like Sean Boyd, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't had a full uninterrupted pre-season with Shells previously. So now he's entered into season 4 with us, and he's always had a niggle, or he's been coming back from a surgery, or he hadn't finished the season fit, or whatever, some combination of those. And we've seen, obviously, when he's fit, just how unplayable he is for most defenses in the league. And if you could marry a fully fit and with a full preseason Harry Wood and a Sean Boyd, and we could get through months with no injury breakdown, with no issue there. I mean, we've never had that. So that's exciting, but again, you don't want to jinx it. I assumed when Meepo came in, being a big physical striker, I assumed maybe it would be 1A, 1B between him and Boyd, and that we were kind of unable to rely maybe on Boyd's fitness. So it's a case of, well, if he breaks down again, or if we need to manage his minutes, as we did a lot of last year, Meepo is will be the next man up, or vice versa. But then from that Waterford game, I heard that we effectively went 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, and that the two boys were very close to one another, and sort of seemed to be very good at working and interchanging between one another and linking up. So he's had assists, he's had goals. Boyd has been scoring. So that's absolutely fantastic as well. That it's that's even better. Arguably, I'm sure Meepo could play a lone striker role, but if we have two fit guys and both are handfuls and both can score goals or assist others, then put them both on the pitch at the same time to be able to do that would be brilliant.
Yeah, I think that we'll see what the starting lineup is on Friday against Drogheda. Ryan O'Kane impressed me as well, Dunny. He's even smaller than me, which that's him going. But he's like a proper little nippy winger.
Yeah.
He's like going back to the good old days when you get the ball, get the head down, and go for that byline or the end line, and get the balls into the box. I think he's going to excite and impress a lot of Shells fans this year.
Hopefully, yeah. I think one thing that we sort of established behind the scenes that maybe we lacked a bit last year was pace, was just raw pace. And I think there's probably no coincidence that Ryan O'Kane was the name that was linked with us pretty early doors before the season had even ended, because he has that raw pace. Dan Kelly can have the same, and by all accounts, Meepo is a bit of a speed merchant as well. So I think we've looked to address that, and hopefully we can see maybe quick transitions and counters whereby we are exploiting that.
Speaking of the coaching, on the coaching side with Damien and Joey and the team there that they've put together, they seem very, very close as well as a group, very tight knit. I know Duffer during the week mentioned a potential sign of interest from a UK club, but he's shot it down immediately. I was there the day he was unveiled out in the hotel at the airport, and as usual, the LOI snakes and gurus, or not gurus, what I call them, whatever you want, to crawl out from under their rocks with the usual. He'll be gone in 3 months. Oh no, well maybe give him 6 months. I know the answer to this question, but to Shells fans out there who may not see how hard he works, this guy gives absolutely everything to that job 24/7, and I'm delighted for the success he's had. How difficult is it for him now, do you think, to recharge and lift everything again and go again for another year?
I think he'll. I mean, personally speaking, in his personal life, I'd say it can't be easy, but that's been his whole career since he was a teenager, I guess, to be driven to levels that the average person can't really relate to. You've heard ex-Ireland teammates and stuff talk about him as he'd be sleeping during the day, he'd eat and disappear and go off and nap, because he knew how much rest and recovery played a part in sort of longevity and performance. And this was maybe at a time when there was still some old-fashioned behavior around Ireland camps and so on, when it came to people enjoying themselves and that type of thing. So I mean, he's always been very disciplined and very dedicated. And I think as far as a manager is concerned, I've heard friends of mine use the term that he's a unicorn, that he really is a one-off. To have someone who's so dedicated, who's so professional and elite, but also who isn't in fear of losing his job. Someone who the idea of that isn't financially motivated, I suppose, is what I mean. He's obviously results motivated. He's silverware motivated. He's career motivated in that respect to get the best out of his players. But he doesn't need the money, and he's not doing it for the money. And look, in the league that we exist in, he's one of one in that respect and in other respects. So we're blessed to have him. I hope he never leaves. To go again, when you get new bodies in the building and you get new voices around the training ground and whatever, gets people going, that motivates people. So it's not more the same. You do have to try and chop and change things maybe to keep people engaged and on their toes. But like once you're playing in front of people on a Friday night and people are roaring and shouting, and the league is going strength to strength, you're going to be on TV all the time now with this new deal and so on and so forth. If I don't think he will lack for motivation, and my gut feeling, if I have one for the season, is that I think he's going to pull out all the stops to try and win us the cup this year. That's I feel, where he won't say it's his primary goal, but I have a feeling that we will sort of prioritize that maybe in a way, possibly over seeing where we are in the league at the time. I suppose will dictate it somewhat, but I do have a feeling that we were going to go absolutely hell for leather to win that trophy this year.
I would agree. I actually agree. I think I don't think he's ever expressed it, but I still have bad feelings from that day, the way it went, and I think Damien and his staff. I agree with you. I think they have a feeling that they really want to set their record straight after that cup final. But that's a good thing, and there's nothing better than somebody who feels they got not a point to prove, but certainly they got that fire in the belly. If they want more. And look, I think he touched on it, that after Shells won the league, fellas went, in my opinion, absolutely understandably, they went a little bit wild, and they enjoyed themselves, and why the hell not? They it's incredible. If they basically live like monks for 12 or 10 months of the year. And but he said, when they returned to training, it was business. Forget about last year. It's down to business now, and that's exactly the sort of mentality I think everyone needs to have. We're starting again from scratch, and we have to go again.
I think so. He was kind of speaking about, phrases to sort of ban and that kind of thing, but that sounds a bit sort of draconian. But I think really what he was saying is something that I could relate to from following fight sports and stuff, where people who would be champion of a certain weight class wouldn't say that they've retained their belt if they, when they win another championship fight, that their mentality is that every time they step into the ring or whatever it may be, the belt is up for grabs. It's kind of like, you don't bring the trophy in with you. So like, this is the same. Like, everybody starts on 0 points. Everybody plays 36 matches. So you're not defending it. You are there to win it again. It's up for grabs.
Yeah.
True. And I think that's a good place to come from mentally. And I'm delighted. I've never been at a President's Cup before, so I'm looking forward to 2 this year, both in Tolka. And to get your hands on a bit of silverware is a great way to sort of motivate people for more of the same.
Yep, that's a lovely segue, Dunny. We'll move to the President's Cup, which is on this Friday. I think as of lunchtime today, Monday, I believe around 3,000 tickets have been sold. And just in case anyone listening doesn't realise, your season ticket does not cover you for this game. So if you're intending to go, you will need to purchase a ticket. And that's my little push for the club there. But we take on our old buddies from up the road, Drogheda, who, in fairness to them, I thought were absolutely excellent in the cup final against Derry, and on the day they deserved it. But they've had we'll go through all the teams next week in our proper football preview for the new season. Drogheda, it's hard to know where they are. They're gone full time for the first time this year. We've seen people like Gary Deegan, Adam Foley, having to step away for work reasons. They can't commit to that. So it's going to be a tricky season for Drogheda. But let's see how they are on Friday. So what would you hope to see yourself, Dunny, when that game kicks off at 7:45?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about where Drogheda might be come the end of the season or anything like that. They'll probably be in and around where they have been for the last number of years. But we know ourselves that on any given match night, Drogheda can put it up to anybody. They showed that last year and years before. So we've come unstuck against them. Not so much in losses maybe as just points dropped, and had very, very dramatic games against them. It's rare that we've put them to the sword. Maybe once in 10 games or so. But so you'll get a tough battle. They'll be physical. Now with they lost one striker in Perot. They've kept the other guy with the double barrel name, who I think
Taylor,
arguably is a better
um,
player.
James Taylor, is it?
Douglas James Taylor,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And look, they have a solid team, and they give us. I mean, on paper we should win. You'd expect to win. It's a trophy at the end of the day, and it's in our place, so you'd want to win. Ultimately, though, could we perform well, get out without any injuries? It'd be lovely to see someone like Meepo or Ellis Chapman get an early goal. Start the season, or even Harry Wood. Get off the mark and sort of, be heading into that game against Derry feeling super confident. But yeah, no injuries would be the main thing for me, particularly at the back.
yeah.
And hopefully just could get a sort of a buzz going, so people roll into the following week against Derry, ready to rock.
Yep. Well, the one point that we didn't mention that sort of came up in the fans forum was the pitch in Talca. It's like I was there a few days ago. It's heavy. We've had a lot of rain. The weather's been very cold, and then it's gone a little bit milder, and it just hasn't had a chance to properly drain out. So I'm sure we'll hear lots of whinging and moaning about the pitch being soft and soggy. But look, this is February in Ireland. We don't unfortunately have the facilities to. We don't have a purpose-built Tala Stadium pitch here in Talca, so
No,
hopefully it's of a good condition this time of year to allow Shells to get that ball down and play there to their strengths.
hopefully so. And look, yeah, I've never really bought into that too much. Like there'll be periods this season, just like there were last, and where it's not good, and there'll be periods where it's fine, and there'll be periods actually where when we were playing in the European matches that it looked fantastic. So as you said, we're in unprecedented. I'm not going to get into climate change discussion at this late stage, but you know,
Yeah,
storm season and whatnot. Like, I mean, these are mad times when it comes to weather events. So yeah, we you kind of just have to roll with the punches,
yeah,
and if the game goes ahead, that's the main thing.
absolutely. So we're nearly there, Dunny. As I said, next week, I actually think this Wednesday or Thursday, the FAI are doing their official league launch. So fans will get to see, I think later in the week, you'll see all the coverage across the papers and TV. And one place we would definitely should be seeing some of it, Dunny, just before we wrap up, is the new Virgin Media TV deal. Now, we'll probably go into this in more detail in the weeks ahead because time is against us today, but that's a 4-year deal.
Mm.
I think it's fantastic news. It's a minimum 36 games. So that's average one per round. But I think like we'll see after the first round of games where there's 2 games being shown, I reckon we'll see more. The question I have for you is that there doesn't seem to be any cash input for clubs in this deal. Is this something that we just have to accept this time round, that it's a little bit of a gamble for Virgin, and then hopefully in 4 years there's more money on offer?
Yeah, I'd, and again, I think this. We might put a pin in this and come back to it another day for a more rounded discussion. But I'd be of the opinion that to sort of go on about what's in it for the clubs, show me the money, is a bit crass. When in the history of the league, no one's ever cared enough to actually do what Virgin Media are doing. They're the first to ever do it, so this is brand new territory. We've all suffered under the tyranny of RTE for long enough, and I give them the benefit of the doubt. But one game per round minimum is fantastic. 4 years is fantastic. Even if they don't give a cent to the clubs, and I believe that they do, I'll try and come to that very briefly in a moment, but being able to go to your sponsors as a football club now and go, we are going to be on the TV. Like Shells now know that Talca is on telly twice in the first 5 rounds. And we can take that to sponsors, and going forward for the rest of the season and into next year and beyond, you can say, look, last season we were on TV X amount of times. And therefore, if you come in and buy a sponsorship package with us, whether it's on the shirt, whether it's on the advertising hoardings, whatever it may be, not only are you going to get whatever we would have been able to offer before, but now you get that plus the eyeballs of the nation X amount of times per season. So automatically, I think that brings in ad revenue and commercial revenue to the club. Obviously, it gets the club to more eyeballs in Dublin. So hopefully, more people will have a look on TV and then decide to come down or whatever it may be. Raises the profile of the league in general. And I believe that there's a 6-figure sum per annum put aside to divide amongst the 10 clubs. So maybe when we return to it, we can dig into that a bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Dunny. Thanks for clarifying that. So yeah, it's something we will be digging into in the weeks ahead. So that's it. That wraps us up for this week. Episode 1, Season 1, our introductory episode. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week once the football is back in action, and we'll have our review of the Drogheda game, and then look forward to the real stuff. Derry City come to town next Friday night on Valentine's night. Something to look forward to, Dunny. Clear your schedule. So that's it for me. Yeah. So Dunny, thank you so much. We shall speak to you next week. And thanks to everyone for joining us. And enjoy Friday night. We'll speak to you soon.
Up the Reds.